Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Putting the Power of Business Automation into the Hands of Your Business Managers. I'm Teresa Resick, Director of Webinars here at AIIM, and AIIM is your host and producer of today's event. And with me today are AIIM's Chief Analyst, Bob Larrabee, and from Flowforma, we have Neil Young joining us as well. And Flowforma is the underwriter of today's webinar, and we thank them for their support. And thank you for taking the time to join us today. Before we get started, I just want to offer a few pointers for viewing today's webinar while you have up on the screen a little bit about AIIM. By joining our webinars live, you can customize your own viewing experience, so feel free to open, close, or resize the different windows. Across the bottom of your screen is a list of all the widgets that are available to you. You can download a PDF of the presentation at any time, so just look to the resources list that's to the right side of the slide area. And there are also a few other documents and links in there to help you learn more about today's topic. Feel free to ask questions throughout the hour using the Q&A feature, and that's on the left side of your screen. And we will hold these questions until the end, where we should have about 5 or 10 minutes to answer them. And this webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted to AIIM.org's Resources Webinars page in just a few days. And now I want to introduce our speakers today, and we have Bob Larrabee, and Bob is the Vice President and Chief Analyst of Market Intelligence here at AIIM. And Bob is an expert in the application of advanced technologies and process improvement to solve business problems and enhance business operations. With over 30 years of industry experience, including product management, R&D, marketing, sales, and education, his passion is to share his knowledge and experience with organizations seeking to improve their operations, embrace technology, and drive their businesses forward. And we also have with us Neil Young, who's CEO of Flowforma. And Neil has worked with Microsoft Technologies for over 20 years, being actively involved in the SharePoint community for the past 10. He is an entrepreneur, and Neil is CEO at Flowforma. And Flowforma is the leading provider of business process management tools for Microsoft Office 365. Neil has spent the last couple of years driving Flowforma's innovation strategy and is passionate about revolutionizing the traditional BPM space to enable the business user to meet the needs of today's demanding workplace. This passion has resulted in the launch of Flowforma BPM, an award-winning enablement tool that empowers users to create and streamline processes smarter and faster using the familiar SharePoint platform without any coding. And I know we're going to hear a little bit more specifically about that product at the very end of the webinar. But right now, I'm going to turn things over to Bob Larrabee and to begin discussing the power of business automation. Bob?
Hey, thanks, Teresa. And thank you, Neil, and the folks at Flowforma for underwriting this webinar. It's a really great topic. I'm excited about this one. And you know, some of the things that I see in my travels and in our research here at AIIM is that there's a lot of similar challenges from organization to organization. The business challenges kind of cross all the different areas, you know, whether it's in human resources, client engagement, contract management, or even the idea of accelerating innovation. You know, in client engagement, the idea of organizations being able to have visibility into processes. And this is something I think that's extremely important. You've got to have that visibility into your business processes. And so while they face similar challenges and similar changes, you know, regardless, like I say, whether it's human resources, client engagement, contract management, or enabling innovation, there are certain things that we look for, certain approaches that we can take. And that's part of what we're going to discuss here today. I'm looking forward to this session and sharing this information with you and having these conversations with Neil. And so when we look a little bit deeper, you know, one of the things that Teresa mentioned is I am the chief analyst at AIIM, and we do a lot of research. And we just recently finished and released our paper-free report. It's available today on the AIIM website. I know that's a shameless plug. But one of the questions that we asked was, which of the following processes do you see where paper is increasing and decreasing? And in human resources in particular, we see substantial paper reduction. 49% said that there's paper reduction in recruitment, and when you look at the employee life cycle overall, 48% said that they're seeing significant reduction in paper there. And so this is great. This is a good sign that we're moving more into this paper-free or paperless environment. So when we dive a little bit deeper into HR and we look at things like employee onboarding, for example, you have a new hire that comes in. You have an initial welcome, bringing this person into the family, the organizational family. We have to collect relevant information, things like payroll information, benefits information, and of course there's the company policies, right? The review. Every new employee gets one of these handbooks. We're all supposed to read it, the 1,000 pages or whatever, and sign acknowledging that we have read it and accept the conditions and terms and guidelines and governance that we've read about. And there's also the initiation and tracking of different training options or requirements. In some jobs, there might be some training involved. You come into a new position, you may be well-versed overall in what this position is, but not necessarily some of the technologies that are being used or the business processes that your new employer has. So the idea of initiating and tracking training options, and then, of course, reviews, regular reviews, 30, 60, and 90 days perhaps, to show the new employee, okay, you're progressing well here, but we need to focus here, right? Keep everything on track. So the whole idea of onboarding and getting things right for the employee and bringing them into the fold right. So yeah, I'm curious, Neil, based on some of the things that we found in the research and some of the highlights that I just talked about in relation to employees and HR, what are you guys seeing? Yeah, what are you seeing through Flowforma in relation to this? Neil?
Neil, you might want to check your mute button. We're not hearing you speaking. Hold on one moment, folks, while we get Neil back on the line here.
So while we're waiting for Neil, one of the things that I'm going to go back to, and this is something I think that is really critical, is the idea of training. This is part of change management also, and it's helping these people transition or helping these new folks transition into this new world. And when we talk about training and tracking options and all of this, one of the things that I think is important also is that this should be an ongoing effort, right? And as much as we can, looking at the information, the tracking options, the training options, this is one of those things where, we really have to take hold and take control. It's also one of those areas where I think the power has to be placed in the hands of the business manager. And when I say that, what I'm talking about is building these programs, these training programs, these initiatives, but letting the manager take control and take guidance.
Neil, are you back on the line now?
I am indeed. For some reason it dropped.
Okay. There we go. Well, here we go.
Right.
So what are you seeing,
Well, thanks
Neil?
for waiting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so from an employee onboarding perspective, and taking, you mentioned the point earlier on around paper reduction, and taking that as a lead-in. When we work with customers and what we see from our customers is a move towards digitizing as many parts of the employee journey as possible. So you think of the first 20 days of an employee's experience in a company, that has a huge impact on staff retention. So we don't just think of one of the processes, we think of all that impact this experience. So if we look at that and we consider, we take a new hire form and new hires, and so before they join that company, and we've all seen a situation where somebody's joining on a Monday and then everything's getting arranged on the previous Friday. So you want to take out all those bottlenecks, and when you see people in place and coming in okay, you can then build out from that process and be more structured. So you look beyond that and you think of, okay, so if we take that new hire approval, we think of the new joiner process, so before they join us, and making sure all those pieces are in place. And an interesting one that came back from one of our customers was basically, why don't we have the welcome pack? So we'll get them logged on the first day that they arrive, but let's have a welcome pack that's a digital version, that's in a PDF, that we can produce from systems that are low code, that can automatically generate because they have all the employee data. So let's produce that welcome pack and have that personalized for them in their inbox when they land in. And you mentioned the 30, 60, 90-day feedback, where people are bringing that and linking that to performance reviews. So again, we're back to those first 20 working days, or that first 1 month in the company. Let's see, can we get some feedback to make sure we're improving things correctly? Let's join that in. Let's link that to performance reviews, so that we're looping back with our employees, because they are our biggest assets. We start thinking then also about movers and shakers in the company. As people move around, things change in the business, and how you have to impact with systems, etc. Is that managed properly? So it's thinking of that whole employee journey. So we talk about employee onboarding, but we're also talking about that full employee journey, and straight through then to leavers as well. So quite a lot can be achieved by looking at digitizing these processes.
Awesome. And it really is truly, one of those things where we're talking about engagement, right? In this particular case, it was customer engagement, but there's also the client engagement. And so when we talk about client engagement, again, having structure and visibility into the engagement process, we need to look at things like responsiveness. How responsive are we? That's a vital part of the client engagement and the client experience, the whole customer experience thing. The idea of secure capture, we want clients to be able to provide information, and it could be information of all different types. It could be financial information, personal information, and also the idea of automated responses, right? Acknowledgments and notifications. One of the things that we see is that when somebody engages with us, we do need to provide that feedback. We never like feeling that we've submitted something and we've provided some information and it's fallen into a black hole. So automating this response mechanism really is extremely beneficial. So again, we went back and we asked, what are the strongest triggers for your organization in relation to becoming paper-free in your processes? And right at the top, improve customer response, along with process reviews and cost savings. And so the whole idea being, we capture this information, we respond back, we give that feedback, and it triggers that process so that we can move along through this journey, through this cycle, and engage with our clients. But not just an engagement in the sense of asking them for information. It's really an interactive process, right, where it's bi-directional, if you will. So, Neil, I'm kind of curious, in relation to client engagement, what are you folks seeing? How are your customers dealing with this?
Yeah, and I have a case study as an example, just to illustrate a situation where we talk about engaging with clients, and how we can help, and how these products can help work with that digitizing of the processes. But if you take the GEA, for example, so they are a sports organization based out of Ireland, but they would have over 500,000 members worldwide. They would have a very strong structured coaching system. So really in terms of their customers, they have, obviously, there's the players, there's the managers, there is the whole coaching organization, and they want to mature processes. So if they took the coaches as their client, they wanted to mature the process on how they engage with the coaches and how they brought them through training programs, etc. So we started in a place with take the e-vetting process. So making sure coaches are fully vetted with the local police, and that process was taken between 8 and 12 weeks to actually go through that process, and that's depending on the area and the backlog that could be more extreme than that. So, through working with these technologies, we would have engaged with these guys. You're talking 3 to 4 weeks to put in place a method for them to, instead of filling out a piece of paper and dropping that physically to the local police station, the coaches were going online. They were filling in a form. So we had this mechanism of online anonymous activity, capture their email, send the details through. As the information comes through, it will work into the back office system, and they will be able to move through that vetting process. They'll be able to integrate that with the local police, and you're joining these processes together with connecting forms, and you're doing this really quickly. So you're starting in this place and then looking as where you move to next. And what you're seeing is you're moving to digital transformation, which is a very hot topic at the moment. But how do we move organizations to that? So maybe that can be sometimes too much for people to consume. So if you think how we approach it is you take a project such as this, and you identify a solution, you focus on that key business outcome, and part of these tools and these approaches is a test and learn approach. So you think of your waterfall and your agile methodologies, but test and learn methodology in terms of being, build out the process, build out the form, demonstrate it, change the workflow, do it in a very iterative fashion, if I can say. So in terms of that test and learn approach, that works very well in these types of projects with clients. And then you're moving towards, so you prove that solution, and then you're moving towards a transform strategy. So you are moving into this digital transformation, and we would talk in the terms of a digital process workplace. Mm-hmm. But they're the ways we can engage with, help customers engage with their clients through these technologies.
It really, what we're talking about here, it's a combination of the change management, the idea of adoption of this new way of working, but also really putting the power, especially in the use case that you presented, it's really bringing that power and that process into the hands of the people who are making the decisions, bringing it down into the front lines. And that's an awesome thing. That's an awesome focus to have. Another area that we see is contract management, and I hear this all the time. I hear from folks constantly. We're wrestling with contract management, and until it's executed, you've got this whole process, right? There's this initiation, and it could be a discussion between, say, you and I, Neil, right? And I'm looking at dealing with you and buying your products and services and so on. So there's this initial conversation that takes place. And then we go through this whole review and approval process. The idea that, okay, we go back and forth, we negotiate, we come to terms, we have the agreement, we sign the contract. But before we reach all of those points, there's a bunch of folks who have to review it, make sure the terms of the contract are okay, get the approvals. In some cases, it might be legal that's involved, might be finance that's involved. And then, of course, status tracking and all of these things come into play. There's all this information that's being moved around the organization or dealt with. In a paper world, it would be actually physically moving this. But in a digital world, not so much. I mean, we don't have to do this as much anymore. And so status tracking, what is the status of it? It's the initial draft, we get the signed contract, it's being implemented and so on. And this is an area, I think, where, mobile support really comes in and plays a critical role, because there's a whole bunch of different things that we can look at from a mobile standpoint. And the idea of being able to interact and engage our clients and players in a process at that point of contact. I mean, that's the key, right, to operating efficiencies and gaining some really great benefits and insights as to what's going on. And so we talked about, describing a typical office in the organization. Again, this comes from the Paper Free report. And it really is kind of interesting. The majority of folks that we polled, 65% of them said they're still signing contracts in paper form. I mean, this is the reason why they have paper. And so I look at this and say, all right, that means that they print the contract or that piece of paper. They get it signed, and then typically what we find is they're scanning it back into a system. of course, in its signed form. And so the majority of people are saying, yeah, we still do signing in paper form, which to me it's kind of like if it was digitally born, it should be maintained digitally. So I'm kind of curious, Neil, what are you seeing with some of your customers in relation to this? Is that kind of the sense that you're getting as well?
Yeah, we are seeing a shift in terms of, and the point you make is very valid. So where people are actually building out these contracts electronically, and maybe sometimes that could just be Microsoft Word or whatever that might be, but then they're moving then into a physical, and I understand the need to keep copies, but with records management and these technologies much more advanced these days, electronic signatures, digital signatures, there's much more opportunity and there's more openness, we believe now, to these technologies to help with the contracts management process. So, we work with a company in Switzerland called Vestigard. They would provide a lot of healthcare aids to poorer countries such as in Africa. So if they come across a water well and they want to take the water, they build straws that actually that kids can use and extract the water, and it'll be filtered. So they do a lot of work, a lot of really good work. But in terms of the contracts that they need to manage with their suppliers and their vendors and their customers, there's quite a lot involved in that. Because of the dispersed locations, they want to manage all that electronically. So in terms of generating those contracts, agreeing those contracts, order process, etc., they're using tablet devices. They're signing off on the contracts. They're moving those pieces around. Data capture. So make all of it, keep the whole process online and lock it down, and conform to regulation at the same time. So with these technologies, you can manage that data capture. The mobile, as you mentioned, is very important. E-signatures, we are absolutely seeing much more of an adoption in that space. And tools that allow document generation in addition to the capture of the form and the workflow, very, very important for achieving these objectives. And then integrating with these electronic signature technologies, really important to help, I suppose, close that loop and make sure everything stays inside the electronic sphere, but that it remains compliant and regulated.
I'm kind of curious. You mentioned something here, and it's the idea of document generation in relation to the form and the information that was filled out on the form. And that's something that I'm hearing more and more from the folks that I talk with, is there's this growing interest in that area. Can you kind of give me a little bit more of an example of what kind of documents that might be? In other words, like with the contract management, what are you seeing in relation to that type of action there?
Yeah, so another recent example would be a legal practice, a large legal practice, whereby they are engaging in aircraft leasing. So if we think about aircraft leasing contracts, two sides to the transaction, with the legal practice in the middle. You'd have the aviation leasers on one side, and then you have the airline on the other side. So they need to come to, and these are quite large value contracts. So they're typically quite bespoke every time. So the type of kit that they're going to lease, and everything that's involved with that, and the sums of money. So no one contract is the same. So they will use the platform. They will capture the right data. They will work back and forth with both parties. They will generate a draft contract. They will bring them in. Presently, they bring them in through PDFs, but in a phase 2, so to review the drafts, and then they move through and then close out the details. And they still are actually getting to that end point whereby they are, okay, now come into the legal practice and sign off on the documents. So the phase 2 of this is a portal whereby the aviation leasers can come in, and that may be a mobile device or it could be the desktop, but they will come in and they will sign if they're happy with the particulars, and likewise the airline will come in and sign as well. So that is the phase 2, and they see that they are quite, for the legal industry, they are quite advanced, but they do see that this is where the industry is moving to. I mean, if you think of the situation of or the scenario whereby people talk about wills, and how we need to create a will, and how will we do that? They're seeing that some of these, how would you say, these services may be much more quicker to build and deploy and issue back out to their customers through these platforms. So that some of these services will become maybe more commoditized in the future, and that they need to react to the changing environment. And that is all part of what digital transformation is doing at the moment.
It's an interesting thing. And when you say they come in to review and sign, are you referring to I'll call it a central repository? They're not actually passing the documents through the workflow, right? Or are they coming back to this central document that they're all working from?
No, we contain it within the flow. We contain the document and changes within. So, it's a very good point in terms of making sure, and it's back to closing the loop, making sure that the contract and all the elements that are part of that contract, and as that contract changes, that moves through the workflow. It doesn't sit outside the workflow, that moves with the workflow. We've methods of being able to bring that from step 2 to step 3 and include the additions to the document, external documents or external fragments. So you may have, we would have business rules, for example, that say, well, if it's this type of contract, then we need to have these clauses brought in, and we want to auto-number those clauses. It will deal with that and build up the contract as you move through the steps, and deal with feedback around changes to the contract, etc. So the more you can keep within that, if you can encapsulate it within the process and have the tools that let you do that, be it forms, workflow, and document generation, then you're going a very long way to achieving this ultimate goal of keeping it all electronic in the future.
I'm kind of curious. We're talking about contract management here. Are you also seeing a similar approach in HR? We talked about the idea of onboarding, and I can see some kind of similarities, I guess, in process in relation to that. Are you seeing that as well in the HR arena?
Yeah, in terms of HR, we talked earlier on about the welcome pack.
Right.
Doesn't really contain any sensitive information. Process documents that are produced in that space work very well. Documents that are a bit more confidential in terms of you got salary details and other elements such as that. We do see HR, and it's just more a shift than understanding the permissions of the systems. But there's some reluctance to moving to that with certain HR divisions. But once the right security is in place and they understand it, then it works very well. But there is a slight resistance. And part of that, we have dealt with it whereby we have steps in the system, and you lock down security, so who can view steps and who can view documents inside steps. You may want somebody to sign off on one particular piece, or you may want, as part of that new joiner process, you want IT to perform certain functions, but you don't want them to be able to sit inside the HR tab and see any sensitive detail. So I suppose the learnings that we have from that is you really need to bring the HR manager through that process. They really need to be comfortable with it. So you need to spend a little bit more time with the HR manager or the HR director to bring them to that promised land. And it's worth the effort for both sides, but they need more attention.
This is awesome. And really, what we're talking about here is innovative approaches, right? The idea of innovation and really, this is another area that I hear, innovation is a mantra these days. We have to be more innovative. We have to support innovation within our organizations. And it's very much talked about. And, there are very few really taking steps to support and enable this. A lot of times we think that innovation is free form, that there's no structure in place. It just kind of happens, people sitting around and talking about ideas. But the reality of it is innovation truly is idea generation. Some of the things that you were just discussing, to me is an example of innovative approaches to working with different entities, suppliers and employees and so on. And so the idea of coming up with these ideas, collaborating, sharing experiences, but sharing thoughts, sharing insights, and then, of course, the development and refinement of whatever this idea might be, and then launching and improving it. And some of this you were touching on in relation to the processes that you were discussing. And so it's not siloed activities. These really do, in a truly innovative environment, it does require kind of a cross-functional team, and it requires a lot of different interactions, both internally and externally. I often tell folks, if you're looking at changing a process, look at it from the end point. Who's going to be interacting with this process? If it's external facing, the customer. Look at it from the customer's eyes, from the outside in instead of the inside out. And it really does change your perceptions a little bit. We did ask about this, the idea of innovation, the idea of incorporating mobile, and the idea of being able to incorporate, in particular, mobile capture, and so that we can share this information as part of that collaborative effort or as part of that store of information that we're building. And so the biggest benefit that we saw that people said they gained from this is the speed at which data is available. It's the greatest benefit, from mobile capture. 44% said that. And then 28% came back and said, this actually reduces cycle times. The idea that I can use my mobile device, I can capture information, I can access it, I can interact with the different players and the processes in the organization. This is really important to us. And we see this as one of the greatest benefits. And so, it gets back to the idea of we're putting, basically placing the power of the business activities into the hands of the individuals, right? The people who need to do the work at a specific time. And so I'm kind of curious, Neil, taking this into consideration, looking at the things that we've talked about, and from an innovation standpoint where we have these collaborative work environments and we're trying to get these new ideas and things launched. What are you seeing with your customers? How are they approaching these things?
Yeah, and you talk about the mobile, and the thing with innovation and idea capture is it can happen at any time. And we often find that the biggest challenge is capturing all the ideas, as opposed to there's not enough ideas in the organization. They're we're all smart people these days. There's generally a lot of ideas in the organization. We're just not surfacing them up, as we would say. So mobile for idea capture, just to extend from your point, I think that's a great point to bring up, because having people capture those ideas when they're on the fly or on the move, or they see something and they say, that would be really good in their product, or a new product for our organization such as this would be really strong. So having a simple way to capture those ideas, mobile very much complements that situation. And you need to make that capture process. So we have an example here of an innovation model, a stage gate process. It can come from many different sources, but allowing people to give in. So if your idea capture is too, how would you say, unwielding or too long or complex, you're going to lose the crowd. So you've got to keep the initial concept grab very, very basic, very simple, but works inside how you look at things. You think of some of the newer trends around open innovation, where you want to bring. So, for example, our partner portal is connected to our innovation platform. So if our partner has an idea, they can just push the idea in, and it'll come into our system, and we back to that connecting process piece we mentioned earlier on. That works really well, because again, they're just thinking of how can we help the product, help our customers, having some gamification around that, and how people can be rewarded for submitting their ideas. That getting your internal innovation process right and having that implemented in the system is the first. And then the second piece is how can I bring others in more quickly, and maybe you have a reward system around that. So you think of that process, you think about how you build it out. We've seen, with some of our customers, so we take Pernod Ricard, for example, the large drinks manufacturer, in terms of how they want to develop new products for their ever-expanding business. So whiskey production will be very, very strong part of their business, and they have a number of ideas every week about how they can build out new products. So they capture that well, and then when it comes into the Innovation Council within the organization, we're talking about voting on these ideas. So you can have simple yes/no voting, but you could be talking about a scale of a vote from 1 to 10 based on these 10 pieces of criteria. So you're getting a bit more in-depth around these ideas. Very relevant as you move through, especially in these large organizations whereby these decisions are fundamental to the growth of the business. So we're really putting a lot of thought into how these concepts and these new ideas are thought through. So we think of voting, we think of capturing that on a more complex level, and then we think of how we report that back. So do I receive a heat map, which is indicating to me out of these ideas which has the strongest area of success, for example? We're looking at the different stages in the pipeline. Are we really moving through, if the metrics, if they're not visible, they can't be improved. So are we moving our ideas through in a proper fashion? So you've put in place the mechanics, you've put in place the plumbing, but now we want to see how we can improve and really get these ideas coming through the company. And just another thought on that, where we talk about gamification and we talk about open innovation and rewarding our partners and our customers, there's also the concept of rewarding your internal staff for these ideas. So how can you leverage these technologies to support that innovation platform?
The whole idea of gamification really is intriguing. A lot of people feel that it's new, and I think it's a great way to help with change management and user adoption. But in reality, I remember when Microsoft Windows first came out, and there was this little game in there called Solitaire. And management didn't necessarily like Solitaire because they thought people were just playing games. But in reality, this was smart on Microsoft's part because it was the first step in getting people familiar with using a mouse to interact with the computer. We were now moving into this new realm, this new way of working with our systems instead of keyboard only. And so Solitaire was a great way. It was a game, yes, but it was a great way to get people comfortable with using the mouse to interact with their computer. And gamification really is a smart approach, I think, to change management and user adoption. So absolutely. So one of the things that really I think comes out of this, we've talked about a few things here, and really when you look at it, the opportunities are huge. The industries, finance, banking, insurance, healthcare, whatever the industry is, there are a lot of opportunities here that we can take advantage of. And when I say opportunities, it's looking for those places where we can leverage the power of automation, where we can take and put the power to make decisions and change the way we work into the hands of the individuals who really are responsible for it. And so, looking at things like the process itself, the review and approval cycle, contracts and agreements, employee onboarding, whatever the case might be, I think these things are essential, and it really is the onus of the business to sit back and look at these things and uncover these opportunities, these diamonds in the rough, if you will. And so things to consider, things that I think, should be a consideration in relation to all of this is the idea of product usability. How easy is this to use? Is it user-centric design and deployment? And this is one of the things that we pulled out from our BPM study earlier this year, is that one of the things that the community at large is looking for is better ways where users can define process maps and make modifications. This was 51% of the folks that we talked to said this was important to them, that the power was in the hands of the people who were actually doing the work. And then voting for review and approval and voting for issue resolution, part of the decision-making process, and then things like e-signature and scalability. And so all of these come into play. These are things that really we need to consider in looking at the various options that are out there and trying to accomplish what we want. And really, fundamentally, what it comes down to is what is the business problem that we're trying to resolve in all of this. So the way that I look at it is, document a process. You sit back and you look at the opportunities. You say, I think there's something here. Maybe it's the onboarding process, and maybe it's the contract management process, whatever the case might be. But document that process and identify who really is in charge of radical process review in relation to that. Who owns this process? Who's involved in this process? And really don't limit the possibilities. Don't restrict yourself to corporate walls. Look beyond the corporate walls and identify, how do I extend my business processes, my interactions, and my information ecosystem beyond the corporate walls? How do I do this securely? How do I do this in a way that it's flexible and certainly usable, but also something that's agile in the sense that as the business need changes, regulatory guidelines change, whatever the case might be, we're able to right then and there make the changes to accommodate, make sure that we're in compliance, but also providing those customers, our customers, with the experience that they expect from us. And certainly the other thing is to promote the successes. When you do make a change, when you do incorporate some of these things, basically go out there and tell the world, this is what we've done. Look at what we've accomplished. Because once people see what has happened, it will actually get back to that innovation thing, that one idea, one change, one small thing could actually trigger a whole series of other changes that would benefit greatly. So promote successes whenever possible. Neil, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so and it's back to that pyramid diagram we talked about earlier on, and we talk about user adoption in terms of getting people celebrate the successes, make a big deal about that first project, because then you can build many successes from that, and then you are moving in a digital transformation fashion. So that user adoption and getting the buy-in with these tool sets, and I'll talk about where we deliver value, but with tool sets such as ours, and we talk a lot around citizen developer ourselves, so arming the right people to deal with the business, bringing the user, so bringing in the business managers into the process. And maybe they're not the guys that build the process, but maybe somebody that's connected to those guys, build that process for them and connect with IT. So our ideal actor, if I may use that term, our ideal actor would be what we'd call a citizen developer, essentially somebody with business analyst skills that either works for IT and is connected to the business, or works for the business and is connected to IT, and has the ability to use these tool sets to test and learn, configure with the business managers, work through the process, prototype, and bring it live. And so where we add value is in terms of the speed to deliver. It's probably one of our biggest call-outs. And we mentioned the GDA project earlier on, but we have other examples where we've been at least 10 times faster than traditional software development tools. And it's that success rate. I'm trying to recall when we haven't had success with a customer by taking this approach. Identify, test and learn, and then transform. It moves much quicker. You're getting the buy-in. You're seeing results much quicker. We had a situation with one customer where they were quoted a 7-figure fee and a 6-month delivery cycle, and we had them in pilot mode in 2-3 weeks. So this is shifting the dynamic. You talk about user empowerment, and that's back to that process BA focused piece. Better value for money. These tool sets should be operating in a SaaS model. They should be affordable because you need people to make that leap of faith, get a project working, but it has to be at a price point that's affordable and has value in the product versus your traditional BPM tool sets. We talked about earlier on, and we've a slightly maybe wordy term in terms of collaborative decision making, but we're really talking there around the online voting functionality we talked about earlier on, the public and private balloting around votes, supporting that, e-signatures, secure, traceable, when you're making a vote on content, that the content is locked down at that time of vote. So when you look back in 12 months, you see that. So that's very much how we see that we're delivering the value there.
Mm-hmm. I know you have some customers that are really doing well in this. Could you kind of share some of that with us?
Yeah, so let me just take a few examples here. So if we talk about AIIM, large insurance company, worldwide presence, We've worked with the AIIM team around their general insurance renewal process, and we're back talking there about contracts management. So in terms of getting the facts, in terms of insurance renewals, looking at their different systems and connecting the data, generating letters and generating documents, policies, bringing all that together with AIIM is working really well. We talk about Lipman Produce, based in Florida. And the great part of that story is the management accountant looked at our product, did a trial. They would have then built out a capital expenditure process. They would have presented that to their chief financial officer, and they would have signed off on that and moved forward with the project. So a real situation where a the right citizen developer got their hands on the tools, built it out, demonstrated the value, and moved forward. And then we talk about the NHS. So you talk about scalability of these platforms, which is really important. Okay, they may be low value, but they need to be scalable. They need to be able to work with enterprise organizations. So 15,000 users in one of the NHS organizations using it for a range of HR processes. And they've done some clever stuff there. So you talk about performance appraisal, but in terms of a talent management framework. So you can imagine managing 15,000 employees and trying to encourage and move forward the really good guys. So they basically linked talent management to the performance review process, and basically if your performance review score was of average higher than 4.0, you would be automatically connected and promoted into the talent management framework in the system. You will be notified with emails, etc. So a real success story of connecting those forms, but looking at ways of using technology with talent management and being a bit more innovative with how they use it. So a real success story there.
I love that term, citizen developer. I really do. So you're revolutionizing, basically what it sounds like. Can you explain your position on that? Yeah,
in terms of the traditional BPM world, perpetual license, high cost up front, a lot of services, a lot of professional services to deliver. We're the total opposite of that approach. It's the speed to deliver, rapid installation, engaging with the business very, very quickly. That's the key to how we see we're revolutionizing the traditional BPM world. The no code, simply logic. We did a recent assessment of our customers, and we were over 90% no code implementations. Where we see the other close to 10% is typically around systems integration. So there's a huge element of no code that we can deliver, and we talked with some of the customers previously, such as AIIM. There's no code involved, so you can deal with complex processes without involving code with the platform. And that user adoption, we talked about that a few times, Bob. That's really important. And when we talk in terms of what we bring in, so we talk about the value of the product. So 3-in-1 tool in terms of forms, workflow, document generation for your contracts management. Really important. Mm-hmm. And there's a good testimonial there from Mike Torres in Nisga Data Systems, and I believe in the Washington D.C. area. And Mike is a program manager. He would have, over his career, he has built up business analysis skill sets. And I think he could be on his 13th process at the moment that he's rolled in the space of 2 months. And there's a testimony there about, so he didn't want to be beholden to custom coding. So he wanted a tool that was powerful, flexible enough, and that he could design himself and change himself, which is very important. A lot of change coming at us these days, and all organizations. And people are expecting more, much faster. So because they see it in other organizations, so why can't we do that? We talk about, and in that concept, Bob, it's around digital acceleration. That's what we're seeing. People are seeing how quickly other things move, and they want to go at the same speed.
I know that you just mentioned, people expect more, and I'm sure that the folks who have joined us are expecting more. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about, what you see, where they could go from this webinar.
Yeah, very briefly, and I know we're going to share this pack out later. So very briefly, you can go to our website. You can watch the latest version, Flowforma 5.0. about how we're supporting organizations and just some feature views there. In terms of if any of the attendees today wish to go up and have a free 30-day trial, non-committal, by all means go to our website again. You'll be able to click straight away for try a free trial, and we'd be happy to help.
Awesome. And if they want to call you, well, basically, there's a couple different ways to do that. Yep.
Absolutely. So there's my number, email, by all means, or connect with me on LinkedIn. Yeah, not an issue.
Awesome. All right. Well, I guess at this point, we'll turn it back over to Teresa.
Thank you. We've been listening to Neil Young of Flowforma and Bob Larrabee from AIIM. And Bob, I just want to allow you just to speak real briefly about the research work that you do. I know you quoted a lot of slides in the presentation earlier, and I know you have a new research project, a paper that's out right now. You just want to mention that real briefly at aim.org/research about what people can find there.
Oh, absolutely. Every industry watch that we do is available up on the AIM site. The paper-free being the latest one that we just recently released. We've done studies in BPM. We do the state of the industry, so a lot of great information up there. And actually, we're in the throes right now of collecting information, collecting data for our upcoming research project, which is content analytics and the Internet of Things. And so how all of this comes into play and the idea of analytics and business improvement. So.
Very good. Thank you. I know, Bob, you mentioned the paper-free industry watch that recently published. Just wanted to mention that we have World Paper-Free Day coming up on November 4th, and Bob is going to be kicking off a virtual event that we're doing on World Paper-Free Day this year, and he's going to talk about in depth about the research that's in that paper-free report. And there's also going to be heroes, other people, end users from different organizations sharing their stories and their successes and how they overcame the challenges. Because, face it, there's challenges with everywhere that we turn in trying to make this work well for our businesses. So we're going to hear a lot of really good customer use stories there, just like we've been hearing today. So just want to mention that to you. Go to aim.org/WPFD, World Paper Free Day, and just get more information and to sign up for that event. We do have time to take a couple of questions in here. I know Bob was taking questions during the webinar as well. So I'm just going to touch in on one or two more questions. Let me see here. One of the things that people were asking, and actually a couple of questions came in with this, about which industries are you seeing the most traction with using this kind of a product? Neil, if we can start with you on, with your customer bases, which are the most frequent industries that you're seeing needing and using this?
So what we're seeing in terms of who are adopting quicker to these types of technologies, we see professional services organizations because there's quite a demand for removing the paperwork and these kind of pieces. So professional services, very strong. Fast-moving commercial goods, especially if we think about innovation and even the standard processes such as HR, etc. They're very active. You talk about life sciences companies, much more, I would say, more acceptable to the cloud these days. Still needs to be secure, still needs to be compliant, and all those good things that you'd expect. But we're seeing that within life sciences space. So they're the kind of the key areas. Another that I would mention that, and they're open for reform, would be insurance and how things are moving. I was talking about the legal industry, but I was rolling that into professional services. But organizations that are verticals that you may not see as being as advanced as before are really pushing and moving there. So that's the verticals we're seeing.
And the business applications, I know the purpose, and throughout this whole webinar we were talking about a lot of different business applications. Someone's asking something, things like timesheet processing and other within an accounting or finance or business tracking. Are you seeing use cases like that?
Yeah, we've rolled in a timesheet application for a resourcing business. So they would have upwards of 150 people in completing timesheets, and they're externally, so they're coming in through an external secure portal. They're accessing and submitting their timesheets, and then it goes back out to the customer who is subcontracting the resource, and the customer then would sign off on the timesheet to validate, and then they process payment, etc. So we have seen that, and again, that was something in the region of 3 to 4 weeks to move that into live. So yes, we have implemented that and come across that.
I do want to squeeze in one more question here for you, Neil. Someone's asking
Sure.
if there's any other technology that's needed to run Flowforma.
So essentially, we sit on SharePoint. So that Office 365, we'd have Office 365. I think at last count is 60 million users commercially. So we see Office 365 as a huge growth area for us, and it's just so quick to get adopted within that place. But we also support SharePoint inside Azure, for example, Microsoft Azure, or it could be SharePoint on-premise. So in essence, once they have SharePoint, we can move quite quickly.
Okay, thank you. Do just want to mention a couple other things here because we are getting to the end of our webinar hour, and so I just want to invite you to check out some next steps that we have available to you, and there is a link in the resources list to you for information about AIIM training. And specifically, I have a link here to the BPM training, but there's a variety of different training programs that AIIM offers, and on a variety of topics, ECM, records management, certainly business process capture. But we can do it not only online, but in-person classes, but we can also come to your organization and customize the training to fit your particular business needs. So there's a lot of different ways that we can continue your learning process. So check this out. Do feel free to click through on this. And did mention that we do have World Paper Free Day coming up in just a few weeks here, so do check this out. Again, a link for that is also in the resources area. A couple other things just to mention in that resources area. Flowforma has some really good information in there, so I do invite you to check that out. And then you can download a copy of the slides to get the contact information and also the link to that trial offer that Flowforma had mentioned that Neil talked about. And so I encourage you to download the slides and get that information as well. And just to let you know that at the end of the webinar hour, a little survey is going to pop open on your desktop, and I would greatly appreciate your feedback on this. Only 7 short, brief questions, and I do value the responses that you give. I do look at them very closely after every webinar, so I do appreciate your feedback. Let us know how we did today, suggest other topics for us to cover, and I thank you for your time in that feedback. Very much want to thank our underwriter, Flowforma. Without the support from our solution providers, AIIM wouldn't be able to provide you with these free educational programs like our webinars. So thank you, Flowforma, for your underwriting support and for your time in sharing your customer stories today. As we do bring our webinar to a close, I want to ask each of our speakers for their closing thoughts or a key takeaway. And I'm going to start first with Neil Young from Flowforma. Your closing thoughts today.
Yeah, if I could just, I suppose, impart one piece from today would be around that citizen developer approach. Having the right people working with tools such as our own makes a huge difference, and working in tandem with the business really important. So that would be the one key takeaway I'd like to impart.
Thank you, Neil. And Bob Larrabee from AIIM, your closing thoughts today.
Well, I think all of this gets back into something that I've been a big fan of over the years in my history, and that really is putting the power of business and business automation into the hands of the business managers and the people who do the work. I love the term citizen developer because that really is where these decisions need to be made. How do we do our business? What actions should we take? And then how can we automate this to become much more efficient at how we do things? So I think that's my parting thought is basically look at your processes, figure out how things are going, and figure out where the power needs to be. Put the power in the hands of the business managers. And I do thank you, Neil, and the folks at Flowforma. Absolutely, as Teresa said, without underwriters such as you, these wouldn't be possible. And I do thank everybody that's joined us for this webinar. Thank you, Teresa.
Oh, thank you, Bob. And you stole my last line. Thank you, everyone, for your time today. That is all we have. So thank you. I do appreciate your time, and hope we've been able to shed some light on a really cool topic here. So for AIIM, this is Teresa Resick, and we'll see you next time. And have a good afternoon.